Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. This is Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2019. It's episode number 64, and we're playing the season opener against Hofstra. 33-24 to our advantage. We've got full momentum in this one, but not a large lead. They actually started with an early lead, hot hand to open the game, making all of their shots in the first 4 or 5 possessions. So we've had to overcome a little bit of a deficit as we've built some momentum. With it 41-24, it looks like we're starting to cruise now. So look at the lineup. Al Morrison is the starter at point guard this year. Charles Kennedy, the backup point guard, has taken on a starting role as shooting guard. Incoming freshman Derek Jepson straight into the lineup over Nigel Porter as small forward. Jeff Brooker also coming in straight away as starting power forward, and Jim Ross back for his, I think, senior year now, playing at center. We'll take a look at the ratings of those players after this first game is done, but as we approach halftime, we are up by 18. We were up by over that a little bit ago. We were over 20 a moment ago. And we'll keep flying through this game and kind of break it down what the expectations are for this season. I've got 2 freshmen in the starting lineup, I think. Yeah, Jeff Brooker should be. So 2 freshmen in the starting lineup. It's a little concerning. I only have 2 of last year's starters in this year's starting lineup. Nigel Porter, of course, been bumped down, so he's still on the team, but it's a little bit worrying that we're a little young this year. A little bit young. There are some worrying moments that come with that sort of territory. We'll see what we can do for the season. I'm not sure I'll be as good as I was last season. I think we can get deeper into the NCAA tournament because that was a real upset last year. But I don't know if we're on our way to another Conference A championship this season or not. We're past the early recruiting part of the year. We'll give a recap of that again after this game is done and over with. But in the meantime, for this one, as we get down to the final 10 minutes, Charles Kennedy, leading scorer on the day, 21 points. He's got 6 assists as well, 8 of 14 shooting. So he's having a solid performance and just 1 foul and no turnovers to his name. By the way, the team as a whole has just 3 turnovers. But defensively, we've forced 16 turnovers. They're actually out-rebounding us. We're at 50% from the field. They're at 40% from the field. They're 9 of 22 from 3. That's the only thing that's keeping them relatively close in this game at all. And by relatively close, I mean they're down by over 20. But fouls are the same, and they're shooting well beyond the arc. And rebounding well. Hofstra's not playing a terrible game here, but defensively, this group, this team is a beast. On my depth chart, the first 9 players on the depth chart are all solid defenders. And I do have a 2 deep, so I do have a 10th player who's not so great at defense. So with my backups on the court, there's a single player of those 5 reserves that are, he's a little bit not so great on his defense. He's not a terrible defender, though. He's actually a decent defender, just not up to the level that I want this team to be at. So that's going to be a thing to keep an eye on as the season goes on. That turnover margin. Today, plus 18. Just 3 turnovers committed and 21 taken away from them. Final score, 97-72. Nearly hit the century mark. If we didn't have that little bit of a slow start, we definitely would have hit it. If I would have used timeout here and there, maybe we would have hit it. Regardless, big game, big win to open the season. Now, recruiting-wise, not so good, actually. Not so good. Now, we've got 2 outstanding recruits coming in Carlton Williams, point guard, ranked 27th nationally. Tom Rowland, small forward, ranked 48th nationally. But if you remember, 5 scholarships. I've only filled 2. I have less than a $1,000 left of our lousy 20,000 that we started with. I've got less than 1,000 left. I've only got 2 offers out there, and both of them went in literally the last week of the recruiting phase. And I might get them, I might not. So we might end up getting 4 players, but those guys were down a tier. Everybody that I had, those 50 players that I started with, I got 2 of those 50 players. The others signed on real quick. 48, boom, gone. Other than those ineligible guys. So that is unfortunate that those recruits got swept up really, really quick. Now we opened as the preseason number 16 team, and looking up and down the standings, the only loss in the top 25 is Arkansas to open the season. Our early games on the calendar are going to be relatively easy ones. So our non-conference schedule is nothing major. We've got North Dakota next. We'll just go ahead and box score this one before we go back into the depth chart. I don't think I'm facing any dilemmas early on in terms of possible losses. We should be coming away pretty easily with some wins. 87-71 final here. We only trailed by 1 early on. Al Morrison, 16 points, 9 assists. That's a solid day right there. Jepson, just 5 points, but still doing his team proud. No fouls while he was at it. Brooker, 13. Ross had 10, added 14 rebounds for the double-double. Charles Kennedy didn't shoot terribly well, 4 of 10. That's still not a bad day. That's 14 points. He added 6 assists, only 1 foul. Again, the team staying out of foul trouble, just 14 fouls for the game. 49% from the field. Not very good free throw shooting, though, 58%. That could use a little work. 43% beyond the arc, almost 44. Rebounds +1. Fouls -6. That's good. But turnovers +10 advantage again in the 16-point victory. All right, so here is the depth chart. Bernard Walton, freshman, 4.5 star potential, 2.5 already. But I did go ahead and redshirt him for this season. Thomas Roy, 2 stars out of 5 already, also redshirting. And then we have our walk-on in Maxi Bergman, and he's a true freshman. He's definitely not going to get any playing time this year, but we'll see what happens in the long run. We've got Chris Zimmerman, 2-star guy. He's outside the depth chart, as is Glenn Bradley. Our 2 deep is where all of our minutes are going to come from. So Tim Thomas comes in, 3.5 stars. Matt Gordon, Nigel Porter, everybody's 3-star or better in our 2 deep. Justin Smith, 3.5 stars, and Jerry Smith could have very well been the starting shooting guard, but with the 2 deep having an even 5 point guard on down, it made perfect sense to keep Charles Kennedy, who the AI selected for the starting shooting guard role, in there, as they're both 4-star guys, and compared head-to-head, Kennedy is definitely a step above Smith, even though rating-wise they come across as level. In terms of potential, Kennedy getting him into the lineup this year also is going to help his advancement to being a 5-star guy, like Al Morrison, 5-star guy. So even though Al Morrison's a 5-star guy, it is Jim Ross who is on the Norton favorites list. Now, to start the season, he's averaging a double-double through those first 2 games. But Charles Kennedy, 20 a night. If he can keep that up, he would be my first ever 20 a night player, and that would be freaking crazy because he'd be near the top of the league if he can pull that off. Let's go ahead and get through the next week. we'll just full sim these. These are going to be some easy games. The next up is Murray State. We're playing at home. They're 0-2, way below our level, so we should cruise through that one. Rank is unchanged after the first week of the season. Or is the first week done yet? Might not be. See, date-wise, yeah, that game's still a couple days away. Now's the end of the week. See if the rankings change at all. Utah picks up a loss. Michigan State picks up a loss. A number of teams around us have already taken their first loss of the season. We move up 2 spots, 14th. Okay, letter of intent from the 2 guys we got. Conference C and D opponents in Arizona State and Florida State. Let's go ahead and see how we compare with them. 90% favorite on the road at Arizona State, and they are ranked number 22. Florida State, 85% favorite. Again, both of these were level at shooting guard advantage everywhere else. And let's quickly get through another week here, though these are going to be some bigger games coming up that next week. So let's just get through this week. And then we'll take a look at the calendar when the week is done before we get into the Arizona State game. That's still going to be next week, so those are scouting reports a week ahead of time. So it only took us 1 week to get into the top 15. We'll see if we can continue that trend. We go to 3-0 now. Next up, at home, Marist. Again, with the easy matchups, so the first 4 games are all cakewalks for us. And we should easily take care of business for each of them. Duke has already picked up a loss. Louisville's picked up a loss. Indiana has picked up a loss. Oregon, Michigan State all have losses already to their names. North Carolina State, Georgetown. Not sure how Georgetown got onto the list when I don't think they were in the top 25 to begin the season. And then they drop a game out of their first 3 and they suddenly are ranked. Utah 1-2 to start the season. Rough start for them. Okay, we do get that win. We're 4-0. Arizona State 2-1. They might not be ranked come next week, which would suck for us. Having them ranked is a little boost to our RPI, which right now sits at 93. Those easy games. It'll go up regardless as we continue to win, but it's not going to go up by much. Just a quick note, I'm sure you've heard me say it before, but I do own a daycare. My wife and I run a daycare together on the bottom floor of our house. Normally, the kids are relatively quiet, things are really structured, but at the very end of the day, the kids that are left, we relax, play, have fun, listen to music, dance around, play around. Stanford also coming up. Stanford is Conference B this season after getting relegated, and we're 89% favorites against them. UNLV also coming up, also Conference B, 90% favorites. So those next 4 games are all against quality opponents. And looking at that team schedule finally, after cruising through 91-54, 83-53, so massive margin of victory over the last 2 games. 2 on the road against quality opponents. 3 of 4 on the road against quality opponents. Then we have our rivalry matchup with the Portland Pilots, and then UMass, who used to be a fantastic team, and then South Dakota State before we get into the schedule. It looks like no tournament this year, so no tournament that we're partaking in, so we'll get a little quicker through the non-conference schedule this year. And here's the Arizona State game. I know I saw Arizona State's logo almost right away as we flashed on by, but I did not see a scoreline associated with it. Maybe you caught it before I did, but at the moment, we sit at 4-0. I wouldn't be surprised if we take a loss in one of these 4 games. I would think 3-1 would be both perfectly respectable and kind of expected, even though we are heavy favorites. I wouldn't be completely surprised, though, if we do go 4-0. 94-77. Oh, my goodness. Okay, that was a big win. Jepson, 18 points. Almost 50% from the field. But 0 for 4 beyond the arc, so that hurt a little bit. But, yeah. Quality win there. That's pretty solid. But anyway, if you haven't guessed by now what I meant about the end of the day and things being a bit relaxed, well, we're at the end of the day right now. So you may hear a little more of that background noise than normal. But I actually have added a little bit of soundproofing. That's now making things a little better than it had been previously. So in the long term, should be hearing the noises of the daycare a little bit less. So I actually dropped to 19th in the rankings after going 5-0, but the RPI is going to come up a lot. And as the RPI comes up, that rank should go back up. I mean, Michigan State is ranked ahead of me, and they're 3-3. North Carolina State's 4-2. Definitely as we get into the conference schedule and I start beating these teams, if that is the case, then we'll take care of business that way. All right, so here we go. Florida State. If we come out of this one, this is 2 quality wins, and there was Seminoles logo right away, like the first game that popped up. But again, I did not see the score, so it's already flashed on by. If I take care of business, this is going to be a big jump to the RPI, and we'll move back up the rankings. We do win, but I have an injured player. 8-point win. This is the closest game we've had all season. Points in the paint, 32-18, the advantage. Charles Kennedy played 1 minute. I can tell you who was injured right at the start of the game. Not cool. Not cool. Hopefully it's minor. A torn MCL, 395 days. I got tomahawked by Florida State. Still processing. Give me a moment. He's going to miss more than a year. And that's grade 3 tear right there. That is all the way torn through. I've had grade 2 tear. That's 50 to 60 days out, and a year and a half after now. Still feeling the effects, but that freaking sucks. In a almost meaningless non-conference game, we lose a potential Hall of Famer at the NBA level. Maybe. No, he's not going to be that good, but definitely could be an NBA elite in Charles Kennedy, and we lose him for well over a year, putting a serious damper not only in our current season, but in his career. I need to get into that depth chart, fix this. Kennedy gone for the year. All right, well, the obvious choice is Jerry Smith moving in, and then we fix the depth chart from there. Now, Kennedy, Justin Smith moves up. That's a clear selection. Nobody else is putting up great numbers. But how do these guys compare? I like the defense of Porter. We'll bring him up. Gordon, Thomas. So no change to that order. But we are down a point guard. We get Tim Thomas. We're down a shooting guard. Okay, so Zimmerman would be that guy. But it's Bradley I'd rather bring in. Can Bradley... Nigel Porter can play shooting guard. Okay, so we slide them on down, go into that sub-rotations, and go with the AI suggested. So Jerry Smith, 30 minutes now. He's a decent player. But what about down the roster? Porter, 10 minutes. So I think Porter picked up a couple of the minutes. Tim Thomas, 14 now. Chris Zimmerman still not picking up minutes. Bradley not picking up minutes. Bergman not picking up minutes. And Kennedy. Dang it. Okay, well, the expectations for the season really just came down a notch. Can we beat Stanford? Maybe. It's a home game. They're ranked 16th. We still are only ranked 17th. They're 7-1. We're 6-0. We're Conference A. They're Conference B. We started the season ranked higher. And our RPI has already jumped to 32nd. We've actually won all of our games, and yet they were still ranked above us. We do win the game, though. But close... No, not close contest. We win by 26. So apparently even without him, we are still an elite team. We'll keep an eye on Jerry Smith for the next little bit, see how he does. Not as dominant as his teammates around him. Seven 7-0. On the road at UNLV. We've already gone 3-0 through that hard stretch. We've had our one home game, the last of 3 out of 4 road games, coming up here in a moment. And absolutely the only stretch of the non-conference schedule that could give us any trouble. And by trouble, I did not know that they meant losing a player for more than a year. That's just effing brutal. At this point, I feel like I have to come out of this 4-0, at least to have look on the bright side. You won all 4 games, right? No, of course not. Now without Kennedy, our level comes down a lot, and we lose our first game of the season. UNLV wins 85-81. And the punishment begins. Jerry Smith scores 11, but he was a -8. He's the one who struggled. He's okay. It's okay. It's more about the depth that hurts. One, Kennedy was our top scorer in the early games, so we just lost all of that point productions. That's going to bring us down quite a bit. But more than that, it's the depth chart, right? As you get into minutes, you're giving minutes to somebody who's not as good as opposed to that, right? His backup was fantastic. So there was no drop-off. So the starter comes in, and he can almost do what Kennedy did, but his sub can't do anywhere near as much. That's where we're feeling the hurt. We enter the hurt locker. North Carolina undefeated. Kentucky undefeated. Seton Hall undefeated. Nevada undefeated. Nevada had the #1 recruiting class as well. So the hurting begins. I feel for him. That's a rough injury. That is a very rough injury. We dropped one spot in the rankings after splitting 2. Somehow Stanford's still ranked above us, even though we beat them head to head. And our RPI jumped 12 spots. UMass coming up. They're 7-2. They're pretty good. And this is now without Kennedy in that lineup. Let's see if we get any update on our 2 guys. It's Greer and Crosby who we're now looking at. So this is only 4. We would still have 1 left, and we're actually still running out of budget even though I haven't done anything. That's nice. Greer looking pretty good with triple plus now. Crosby has slipped to a single plus, so he's not taken kindly to us. Both of them are Bs, ranked 73rd, and whoa, Crosby, whoa. Crosby was ranked like 105. He slipped a lot. I have no money, so there's nothing I can do with these guys. And we're not showing up on their list. That's awesome. I'm taking a hurting this season. Jeez. Rivalry week for me. Just the one game coming up tomorrow. Pilots are 3-4. So I know I've mentioned plenty of times that I coach basketball among other sports, and it was just 2 nights ago I was getting my renewal for my CPR first aid, something, of course, I've been through many times. In fact, it was the last time was in the exact same classroom I was in, with the exact same teachers, the exact same slides and procedures, and they added 1 slide since 2 years ago. The last time I did my renewal, it's, so informative. Actually, by this point, it's starting to become routine to where I actually do think if a situation comes up as we win this game 81-54, 25 points from Jim Ross, massive double-double for him, do think that if it actually comes down to it, that I could successfully do what is necessary and give CPR and whatnot. Anyway, person I was sitting next to, young, recent high school graduate, played community college ball for a year and is volunteering in the spring. He's transferring to Portland State, gonna play ball at Portland State. So we had a nice little talk about that. That was my old rival in the 2017 edition. I switched it to the Pilots this time around, but so that was interesting. Nice kid. Next game, 4 days away, and it's going to be UMass. UMass, a little resurgent this year, 8-2, looking pretty solid. Oh, tournament. Oregon. Okay. Battle for Atlantis. Oregon lost that one. That should have been an upcoming scouting report, I would assume. But not a UMass scouting report. They lost their last game, though. They dropped to 8-3. Come away with the win on that one. The RPI now into the top 20, as is that rank, seemingly holding around anywhere from 16th to 19th. We've been there pretty much the whole season thus far. What conference are they in these days? F. Next up, South Dakota State, just 5-4 and in a lower conference, so that one should be a pretty easy one for us. As long as we don't have somebody go down for a season-ending injury. So currently it's Duke on top of the rankings at 12-1, Florida ranked number 2, Syracuse, Louisville, Pittsburgh. North Carolina still undefeated, but only ranked 6th. Could be an RPI issue with that. Wake Forest still undefeated, 11-0. But at least in the top 25, just those two teams remain undefeated. So we are certainly up there. It should be higher up this list, realistically, but that loss, that's not doing us any favors. Generally speaking, a 9-1 start to your season is a good season and nothing to complain about. So from that perspective, things are going well. I gotta have the glass at least with a few drops in it, right? Can't be completely empty. I don't know if I'm quite glass half full, but I'm trying to be optimistic, right? We're off to a decent start for the season. Now, Conference A play is coming up here pretty soon. Utah will be the first opponent. Now we start to get the real matchups. Oregon will be second on our list, and they're the slight favorite. Oregon looked pretty dang good at preseason ranking. They were inside the top 10, so we are not the favorite for that one. With Kennedy down, losing that depth chart a little bit hurts our bench, hurts that comparison. I think we might have been just about favorites against them prior. And I think this might be our last game of the non-conference schedule. Without a tournament this year. We didn't get a tournament invite this time around. It's like they knew Kennedy was going to go down long term, and they just wanted to add insult to injury for me as we go to 10-1 and 93-67. So outside of the one close loss and two games that were comfortable victories, everything else was blowout, even though we did play, 4, 5 quality opponents. So the team looks good. Next up is that first conference game of the season, and it's Utah, who started the season ranked above me, but at just 8-3, they've slipped out of the rankings. Weird thing is North Carolina State didn't hurt them. They're 10-3. They're still ranked right about where they were. Same with Kentucky. So a little odd that Utah took a bigger hit than they did, but it could be an RPI thing. Our RPI and rank match up perfectly now, at least. So apparently we are justified. Duke lost their second game. Very well could knock them off the top spot. But with the non-conference schedule now done, we'll take a quick look at the standings. See how the league compares as we head into the first conference game in terms of ranking. You can see the league is all over the rankings. Utah, Memphis, Cincinnati, Miami, and Georgia Tech, the only ones that are unranked currently. And in terms of records, any weaknesses? Miami 8-4. Utah 8-3. Memphis just 5-6. They're having a rough year. And Cincinnati 8-4. So it looks like we have maybe a clear bottom four. One really obvious bottom four. They're 5-5 at home. Memphis only played one game on the road. So yeah, other than Memphis, it's going to be a competitive league. But I would definitely say that there's a decent amount of teams here that we're going to have a fairly easy time with. Should win all of those games. But then looks wide open. RPI-wise, Syracuse is 1. Florida is 2. Duke dropped a bit after that loss, so they're down to 15. North Carolina is 7. And they picked up their first loss. They're 11-1, so no undefeateds left. Back to whoever the other one was. Seton Hall. Wake Forest? Where'd Wake Forest go? I don't even see them. Did they 12-1? They lost as well. So all the undefeateds done and dusted. So obviously the big thing, the disappointing thing is both the recruiting and the injury. So we only grabbed 2 recruits, though they're good ones. Not looking very good on getting anything additional. We have no money to go out and do anything. But then Charles Kennedy, he's still looking right at a year plus a few days. So we're coming right up on the 1st of 2033. 1st of January 2033. So right as we're starting the conference schedule. So at least we'd get him back by then. But that's rough. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we'll get a little luck on our side next time around, because not very lucky. Be sure to hit that like button. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.